afternoon, everybody. We're going to move on with the program. Can everybody hear me? Hello. Y'all were so good this morning. All right. I have three things I want to mention briefly before we move forward. Thank you so much. It's the Broadband groups that are always the rowdy ones. Okay, I trust you all are enjoying yourselves so much, and I want to just mention a couple of things real briefly. On the program, in the orange box there is a hashtag or pound Kansas Broadband, KS Broadband for Twitter. Let us start tweeting. We're supposed to be knowing about the technology, so get to tweeting how great things are. I am guilty of not tweeting this morning, and I'm going to do that. That's number one. Number two, I mentioned, this is important, I mentioned earlier that all of these things are made possible by, and then I read off a list of sponsors, really happy about our sponsors, and I omitted one. Apologies. But one of the sponsors that we have for our conference is the State Independent Telephone Association, which is a association of rural telcos that I did mention is important for our state. So give them a round of applause too, because they're the ones that Thank you. And speaking of lunch and speaking of sponsors, today's lunch, I'm sure you will all just say it is great because it is, and it is courtesy of our luncheon sponsor, Cox Communications, and for a real brief word from Colleen Jennison from Cox.
Thank you. It will be very brief. I think I should point out to begin with, I am Colleen Jennison. Colleen Jameson is here as well. I am blonde, she is brunette. I think my husband is kind of cool, but I think her husband probably has a lot more historical coolness for many people in the room, as he is a former basketball player. So, different husband, just as cool. Really want to thank Stanley and the Department of Commerce for the opportunity to be here and to be a sponsor today. It's only through dialogues like this and continued conversations that we start to make things happen, make things grow, make things bigger. I have had the opportunity to participate in the Shawnee County and Topeka pilot project with Gina Millsap. She and I have had lots of conversations. And those conversations range from everything from infrastructure to broadband and how we bridge the digital divide. I sat in this morning on the Dodge City meeting, equally as interesting. They were part of the pilot project, but took a different look at it. So it's just really important that the stakeholders also include the providers. Cox Communications is a proud provider in the state of Kansas. And as we continue along these discussions and try and find solutions to propel Kansas even further than it already is, I will quote George R.R. Martin from the Game of Thrones that different roads sometimes lead to the same castle. So we look forward to participating in these conversations and enjoy lunch. Thank you.
Hi, I'm back again. Thank you all. This is going fabulously well. I'm super excited to announce our keynote lunch speaker. I'm a big fan of Laura Breeden. She's here with us from NTIA, part of the Department of Commerce, U.S., not Kansas, right? So I will let her explain. I will share it with you all, because I know you all love those funny stories, right, where people say how they met someone. I met her in a bathroom. She was super nice and pleasant, and people aren't always like that in the bathroom, which I didn't remember at all. I'm just excited to announce that Laura is going to come up here and talk to us about broadband adoption. So Laura, can I hand it over to you? Sure. And this is kind of goofy, so it's not too
Hello, everyone. Greetings from the other C, DC. It's nice to be here in KC. It's always good to get out of the Beltway. Let's do a sound check first. I noticed this morning, and I apologize, I couldn't make it to the opening sessions because I was actually putting the finishing touches on this talk. But how's the sound quality? Everybody here okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I asked them if they could bring the lights up in here. It's a little cave-like, don't you think? No bats, but a little cave-like. But this is what we've got, and so we'll work with this. It's great to be here. As I said, it's always good to get out of Washington, and we had a very busy week last week that you may have heard something about, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But it's good to be here, and the first thing I want to tell you is congratulations, Kansas. Next slide, please. Oh, am I doing the slides? Yeah. Because there's no clicker here.
I can do the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So, lots of accomplishments here in the state that you can be very proud of. You have excellent data. You can look at it on the walls outside if you haven't looked at it online about what's happening in Kansas in terms of broadband provision, brought to you by the State Broadband Initiative. So congratulations to all of you who worked on that. And again, I'm sorry I wasn't here. I think Stanley called me out this morning, and as I said, I was upstairs polishing my PowerPoint. Here in the state of Kansas, you have higher than the national average adoption rates. Another thing you can feel really good about. You have a lot of very detailed data about current availability of service, about adoption, and about use. And I know some of that data came, again, as a result of the State Broadband Initiative. You have 3 really top-notch surveys of residential adoption, business adoption, and adoption in community anchor institutions that were produced by a consulting group back east. So lots of good data about what's happening here, and lots of data that you can act on. And you also have a pilot program, and you're hearing more about that today. And then finally, of course, last but not least, you have the first Google Fiber City. Is there anybody here from Kansas City? How's that going, Kansas City? It's going okay? It's kind of a be careful what you wish for thing, isn't it? It's very big, it's very complicated, it's very fast. But I think the whole country is watching, if not the whole world, to see what happens next with Kansas City. Can I have the next slide? I'm reminded today that in the 1930s, there was a debate about rural electrification. This is a slide from the 1930s of a line worker on a pole, probably in Kansas. The debate was about how expensive it was going to be and what a massive infrastructure challenge it represented to bring electricity to America's farms. And at that point in the 20s, and this would be as of January 1925, only 6 of the 6.3 million farms in the United States, only 205,000 were receiving centralized electric services. By 1936, the Rural Electrification Act had passed. Within 4.5 years, the number of farms using electricity had doubled. But it took another 30 years, a whole generation, to bring power to 98% of American farms. Today, we find ourselves in a similar situation. Getting broadband service to America's rural areas is a massive challenge, one that will require ingenuity and determination. That is one reason that the Commerce Department, where I work in Washington, has been working with USDA and other partners to make sure that local governments, businesses, co-ops, and utilities have the ability to develop homegrown solutions. Next slide. I work for the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which has been helping to find solutions for almost 40 years, ways to fill the gaps in service and develop new applications and new uses for technology. We've worked with state governments, local governments, universities, public broadcasters, private companies, and nonprofit organizations to bring technologies like digital broadcasting, the internet, and broadband into areas that might be overlooked otherwise. Our approach is based on finding and lifting up local solutions and local ingenuity. I'm going to give you some background about the program that I have been working with since 2009, the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program, which, like the State Broadband Initiative, was funded by the Recovery Act of 2009. And just want to give you a sense of some of the things that were accomplished by people in all 50 states, actually, and a number of territories through these grants, over $4 billion in grants that were matched by considerable amounts of local funds, a minimum of 20%, and in many cases, 30% or more of local funding. What you're looking at now is a map, and this map is actually available online. So if you want to go online and look at where the program assets were able to fund programs, infrastructure, public computer centers, broadband adoption, you can visit our website and use the map to see that for yourselves. The program funded 4 types of projects, as I said: infrastructure, public computer centers, sustainable broadband adoption, and the SBI program, the State Broadband Initiative, which funded mapping in every state, in all the territories, and also provided supplemental funding for the kind of capacity building and local pilot projects that happen here in Kansas. Next slide. The blue, which is the bulk of the funding, represents the grants that we made for infrastructure projects. These were made to a huge variety of kinds of organizations, everything from governments to universities to private companies, co-ops, collections of companies. Is there anybody here in the room who worked on a BTOP infrastructure project? One person, a couple of people over here. That was the bulk of the funding. Those projects are winding up now, and in a minute I'm going to tell you what happened. I worked directly with the Public Computer Center and Broadband Adoption programs. Those were respectively $200 million and $250 million. The Broadband Initiative was around $300 million. And again, all of these funds went out as matching grants to localities, communities, states, and nonprofits. Next slide. So what happened? The infrastructure investments have yielded over 112,000 fiber miles. That's enough to go to the moon and back 4 times, I think. Oh no, that's not right. It's 4 times around the Earth. Anybody know how far it is to the moon?
93,000 miles.
So we'll work on that later. Somebody Google it.
93,000 miles.
No, 93 million miles to the sun, right? How many to the moon? Somebody look it up. We have Wi-Fi. Part of this program, and the reason it's called community infrastructure, is that the providers and the builders of the networks were to approach other organizations in their communities who could benefit from service, like universities, community colleges, healthcare, libraries, and connect them as part of the build-out. And most of this build-out actually was middle mile, but these were laterals that went to community institutions, 25,000 of them. And again, on the map, you can, it's an interactive map, you can look and see how these investments were made. You can look by state, you can look at type of institution, and so forth. Next slide, please. Computer center and broadband adoption investments. We funded the build or the upgrade of 3,000 public computer centers in libraries and housing programs, all kinds of places. The broadband adoption grantees were able to connect more than 730,000 households as a result of their efforts, and more than 4 million people received training as a result of these projects. And next slide, please. And of course, the National Broadband Map was created along with all of the ancillary programs in the states. So it was a very, very exciting program to work on. The conversation today about broadband is very different than it was in 2009 when the program started, and I probably don't have to tell you that because you're part of the conversation. I'm really pleased to be here in Kansas to talk about the work of our agency. And in particular, what we're going to be doing now that those grants are winding up to help continue the momentum around broadband. Because this is not something that can be accomplished from Washington. The challenges of broadband expansion and adoption are very specific to place and time and population. And they require smart, local solutions that build on community strengths and honest partnerships. Our role is to make the best information and ideas that we can available to you. Next slide, please. This is our new website, which we just launched last, it's actually a refreshed website. It will look familiar to any of you who have been checking in on us over the years. But it features the new initiatives that we launched last Wednesday in connection with the President's announcements about some new measures to promote the development and adoption of broadband. Our new activity is called Broadband USA, and we will be working with communities that are planning new services and are upping their game where they have existing services. We are going to build on the expertise and relationships that have been developed over the last 5 years. We'll be providing technical assistance, information products like the ones I'll tell you about today, and support for regional events like this one to keep the momentum going. And we'll be working with other federal agencies to streamline and coordinate federal programs that involve broadband through a new interagency council, including 12 agencies from agriculture to transportation. I'd like to show you a short video now that the Extension Service at the University of Wisconsin put together as part of a broadband adoption grant from NTIA. It really gets at what makes this question of broadband so important for economic development and small business, far better than I could tell you, I think. And by the way, there are a number of videos like this available on YouTube that were produced by the university around other topics like education, health, public safety, tourism, and so forth. But I thought this one did a really great job of capturing what broadband can mean for small business.
E-commerce can create good-paying jobs, even in small towns like Fenimore in southwestern Wisconsin. Here, a company called Webwise Design and Marketing put down local roots and grew as the internet expanded.
We're a web development company, websites, web applications, and probably the more important part of it is marketing. I picked these books up at an UW bookstore in downtown Madison in 1995. Came back to Fenimore and sold computers and repaired computers on the side while I taught myself how to design websites. Played around a little bit and realized I needed a client list if I was going to sell any. And so I created a website for the city of Fenimore, and I created one for Tim Slack Realty here in Fenimore. Actually stopped at his office and told him he had a website. He said, "What's a website?" He was the first of many that I had to explain what the internet was and what the World Wide Web was, and why the heck they want to pay me to do something for them. There are currently 5 of us here full-time. We provide the online marketing services. We do search engine optimization, we do search marketing, we do graphics design, mobile design as well, along with those. We have a wide variety of clients. The themes of all of them is that they're created so they get found. The greatest website in the world does you no good if nobody can find it. I lived in Chicago when I was going to school a little bit, and I lived in Madison for a while. And I like all of those places, but Fenimore is a really friendly little town. It's home, it's quiet. I just like it. I like the people that work for me. They like it. I believe that anybody here will tell you that they're very happy with what they're making. Everybody always wants to make some more, and I want to be able to see them make more. But compared to other jobs jobs in the area, they're very good jobs. We do a lot of uploading files. I mean, that's what we do pretty much all day long, every day, is upload and download files to websites and web servers. Our upload speeds are really slow. It's been a limiting factor from day one. And yes, they have more broadband available, but not at a cost that we can afford, or I think probably most small businesses. So it's limiting. Cheese is in our DNA or genes. Amy, our graphics designer, and I both grew up in the cheese business. Our first cheese site was Stumble Cheese and Sherman's Cheese out of B-Town. You know, I knew those people from the time I was very tiny. And then I believe Upland's Cheese was the next one in rural Dodger. And we also knew Maple Leaf Cheese out in Monroe and the Old Ice Creamery out in Monroe. And we did an e-store for them that serves both of them. It's called This Cheese Store. We also have Car Valley Cheeses e-store, and they have multiple locations where they can take phone orders or orders off of the web.
How are you folks doing? You're back from work. Well, that's good.
Looking for a partner.
We make about 80 different cheeses. The green is the cow milk, the blue is the goat milk, the mauve is the sheep milk, and the mixed milk are in that color there. The picture in the upper left-hand corner would be my great-grandfather and great-grandmother. They must have been very proud of that cow. Cordero was milking it, and Simon was holding it. They all turned out to be cheesemakers. By having stuff in stores, it really opens up the possibility of selling and marketing new cheeses. We have done quite a few American originals. And by American original, I mean cheeses that we just made up. This would be a typical American original. The name of this one is Mobay, and it's a layer of sheep milk cheese and a layer of goat milk cheese. And it has a red ash in the center.
Let's stop the video.
We make
I don't think we need to run to the
no one
end.
really carries a full line.
Leave you all hungry for more, as they say. And again, I encourage you, I think the University of Wisconsin did a great job putting these together. They, as I said, have a number of different topics that they've taken on, and all of them are this quality and this level of information. So, oh, I get to click. Let's see if it works. Oh yeah, that's a cat. So, broadband is about more than cat videos, Netflix, or multi-user online games. Today, it is a fundamental enabling technology for education, healthcare, economic development, public safety, and civic engagement. You'll hear more about that at this conference in the many sessions and hallway conversations that go on here. My job today is to tell you what we've learned about how to approach broadband adoption and show you some tools you can use to plan and carry out your adoption programs. And I think I have 5 minutes, is that right? Okay, so I'm going to talk fast, and you should know that almost all of this information is online, or you can email me and I will be happy to answer specific questions if we don't have time for those in the presentation today. Whoops. Did I do that? Come back.
Go back to whichever slide you want.
Oh. How did that happen? I was? And you guys didn't say anything? It's just cruel. Okay. So, nationally, almost 3 in 10 Americans don't have high-speed internet. There are some barriers that are very well documented. Lots of research on what this means. And as you can see from the map, the states with the lighter color have less availability and less affordable broadband. Those tend to be more rural states. I'm happy to see that Kansas is not in that category. Nearly all urban residents have access to high-speed broadband, but the percentage in rural areas can be much lower. The first thing that I want to talk about is that broadband adoption is not just a matter of build it and they will come. It's more like build it and they will ask you how to use a computer, or what it's good for, or whether their identity is going to be stolen. Reasons for not using broadband are very individual and very complex. The most basic reason is lack of access, a problem that, as I said, is much more acute in rural areas. But as this chart shows, and I know you can't read it from there, so the top bar says, don't need it, not interested. That's the blue bar. The green bar says too expensive. So when you talk to people about why they're not online, they say, well, I don't need to be online. Or they say, well, I'd like to go online, but I can't afford it. Last week, we released a new guide to public-private partnerships that describes a number of different approaches to finding funding. Yes, that's a picture of it. You can download this. And the expertise to build new networks based on right-sizing the solution for your community and engaging both public and private assets. As you see here, cost is also a factor for people who are not online. The cost of service can be prohibitive, and the devices themselves are expensive to acquire, expensive to maintain, and most of us have support systems in our social networks that can provide some assistance with that kind of maintenance, but not everyone who's not online has that advantage. There are lots of ways you can make service more affordable by discounting the monthly fees, by using recycled or refurbished equipment, subsidizing the upfront costs, and all of these are documented in a publication that I'm going to tell you about in just a minute. Another critical factor is lack of skills. That could be digital literacy skills, and sometimes it's basic literacy, the ability to read and process written information. Many of our grantees told us that they were very surprised by the low levels of digital literacy that they encountered when they began to offer classes. People had never used a computer, never touched a mouse, had no idea what all that stuff on the screen meant. And so they were really starting at the very beginning with how to use a computer and what you might find on the internet. There's a lot of fear in people who are not online about looking stupid, about breaking the computer, about not being able to learn the things that they would need to know. And successful broadband adoption programs address that issue head on with sensitive staff, whether the students are migrant workers, seniors, refugees, business people. It really doesn't matter. A basic truth about adult learning is that adults will learn things when they need to use them. So effective instruction has to connect the new skills and information to real world needs, a job, parenting, managing your health, or keeping in touch with family. This is a computer center on a Menominee Indian reservation in Wisconsin. They worked actually with the university, and they also had a separate grant to create this computer center. And one of the really wonderful things that happened as a result, I don't have time to talk about the whole thing, but many of the tribal members are active duty military, and the reservation is very isolated and had very poor broadband service. With the new facilities at the computer center, they're now able to keep in touch with deployed family members through Skype. So no more expensive phone calls, no more just being out of touch. And if any of you have family who travel or who are deployed overseas, you know how important that can be. So that brings me to the final reason that people give for not going online, which is actually the most common one, and that's that it's not relevant. Why do I need it? So adoption is really about connecting individuals with online tools, online services, online information that can affect their lives. And that's true whether it's a business, whether it's a child, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a senior. Here in Kansas, you have all the ingredients you need to improve broadband access and adoption. you have good data, and this is actually data from the survey of residential users about how important is it to go online if you have a home-based business. And as you probably can see, something like 92% of respondents said it's very important or somewhat important. You have great data from the state broadband maps. You have a lot of compelling reasons to use broadband here in Kansas, from farm management to providing world-class education in rural schools to treating stroke patients in time to make the difference between life and death. You also have talent and creativity and a pioneering spirit. I'm going to briefly show you some of the tools that are available through NTIA. This is a publication that we developed in 2013 based on the good ideas in the field that we were seeing. It will help you plan, design, staff, and run a community adoption program. It's organized in a way that allows you to identify the population that you want to serve and the barrier that is standing in the way of that population, and find a strategy to approach that. So what's next for us at NTIA? We will be delivering a new toolkit in the spring for local and tribal governments that are planning broadband projects. And we also have just released, as I said, the guide that you saw earlier. We also deliver webinars on a regular basis so we can get fresh and timely information to wherever you need it. Our next one is January 28th, and we'll describe the new activities at Broadband USA to support national broadband advancement. And we'll dig into the details of the public-private partnership guide. We often use grantees from the programs as presenters in these webinars. This is a list of resources. We look forward to working with you to help you realize your goals for Kansas, its citizens, and its communities. Thank you.